Alrighty, now, who here saw this, ladies and gentlemen? That's right, we've seen protests around the world standing up for Australia, but we're going to have a particular look at New York City. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the good people of New York who left their homes to stand up for Australia, and we saw a lot of Australian flags on display, which is very, very heartwarming to see. New York City, of course, the residents have been subjected to very oppressive so-called health directions. We see the implementation of a vaccine mandate and businesses supposedly unable to operate unless they're enforcing vaccination for their staff and people that can enter their businesses. And I'm reading horrible reports of many businesses in New York that are losing huge amounts of money. But there is a resistance. That's right. There is a tremendous protest movement growing in New York City. They're exercising their First Amendment rights, their human rights, rights that should never be infringed upon by the government, and they're doing a tremendous job. I've got another little piece of footage here. It goes for only about 2 minutes. Very heartwarming to see the people of New York waving Australian flags and standing up for Australia. I'm going to play that for you now.
In Australia is not just going to be Australia. And when it shows up on our doorsteps, we're going to punch it right in the fucking teeth. I'm done being nice.
So to the people of New York, thank you so much for raising your voices for us Australians. We certainly don't wish what's happening to us upon anyone else. And for the record, Australia and the United States, we have a tremendous historical relationship. We're great friends. We share a rich military history together and a rich history of friendship. So the next little segment of the show is a little bit of history, actually, which is something we don't do a great deal of on the MCJ report. But seeing the people in New York City raising the Australian flag, it most definitely made me feel quite patriotic and grateful for the friendship that we have with our American brothers and sisters. So I'm going to just read to you here a little bit of history from World War II, when a huge amount of United States military personnel were stationed over here in Australia after fighting around the Coral Sea and that particular region, and the response of the Australian people upon meeting the personnel from the United States military. So this is a bit more of a specific story in relation to Melbourne. So I've got the browser here. I'm just going to read to you here. All right. So this is coming from mcg.org.au. That's right, MCG, the stadium. So US Marines. Have a look at this. After the outbreak of the Pacific War, the Commonwealth government requisitioned the MCG for military purposes. At 1942 until 45, it was progressively occupied by the US Army, Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, and the US Marine Corps, and the Air Force. So more than 200,000 personnel regarded the ground as their home away from home. Okay, it says most famously, in 1943, the MCG was home to the legendary 1st Regiment of the 1st Division of the United States Marine Corps. The 1st Marine Corps were the heroes of the battleground of Guadalcanal and used the, quote, cricket grounds, as the Marines referred to it, to rest and recuperate. In 1942 and 43, Melburnians en masse proved wonderful hosts to the soldiers and Marines. Melbourne was described as the, quote, best liberty port in the world. How times have changed, don't you think, ladies and gentlemen? It says here, hundreds of servicemen were taken into Melburnians' homes and softball and gridiron matches were played at the MCG. All right, so I'm going to expand on this a little bit. Now, the next piece here, this is coming from the United States Naval Institute, titled The Melbourne Interlude. Goes on to say here, for the majority of the Marines, still extremely youthful by age, but now matured beyond their years in experience, Guadalcanal radically dimmed out memories of their recent past. With its wide and lighted streets, trolleys, cars, bars, hotel houses, and above all, warm and exuberant population that greeted them as the, quote, saviors of Australia. Beautiful Melbourne presented an idolized version of life without war. The locals literally opened their houses to provide anyone who desired his own home with family life instead of a billet. Most Marines also entertained aspirations for companionships beyond domestic tranquility. They found the Australian girls alluring and romances flourished. There were many engagements and a few marriages. Goes on to say here that at the time, one of Melbourne's distinctions when the Marines arrived was the scarcity of other servicemen. That changed when the fabled 9th Australian Division veterans of the battles of Tobruk and El Alamein in North Africa staged through Melbourne en route to further combat on New Guinea. After a number of pub brawls, the Leathernecks staged a joint beer party that brought peace for its time between the members of the two hard-fighting units. Okay, so it says here that there were a few pub brawls. This has been very well documented. So the Aussie soldiers and the US soldiers, they got into it a bit at the pub. So I look at it, I try to think, why might that be? I look at the servicemen from Australia from their perspective. Probably they've come home from war. They see all these US Marines and soldiers in town chatting up Australian women, and maybe they felt like, all right, this there needs to be a fight over this. So that's just my assumption, okay? Just don't shoot the messenger. Goes on to say here, for a year after departure, the 1st Marine Division postmaster noted more outgoing mail went to Melbourne than to the United States. Some relationships between Marines and their hosts would endure a lifetime. Okay, so it's also documented that after this period, many Australian women departed, emigrated from Australia, moved to the United States to marry their Marine boyfriends. That's right. So I'm just going to show you a few photos here, a few historical photos. The Marines disembark in Melbourne, February 1943. It says here the parade of the 1st Marine Division passed Melbourne Town Hall on the 22nd of February 43. Local businesses boomed, so a lot of the troops just shopped at local businesses. This is a big drink-up that was held at the MCG between the Australian and United States servicemen. So it's been documented that this drink-up kind of helped to settle a few differences and for new friendships to be established. I also read that paper cups were served out of concerns that glass may have been used as a weapon between the guys. And this right here, US servicemen playing gridiron in the MCG. And there were, discos and all sorts of things. So anyway, I just wanted to put it into a little bit of historical context, the tremendous relationship that Australia has with the United States and has had for a very long time. So for everybody out there standing up for Australia, thank you. And we'll certainly be more than happy to do the same in due course.